For each fight on this weekend's upcoming card, including for the prelims, I'm going to be comparing stats, reviewing recent fighter history, analyzing the results of my 7 data science prediction models, and giving a combined weighted prediction based on those models. I'll also provide my final prediction combining both quantitative and qualitative information together. Later this week, I'll upload a video covering promising underdogs, best inexpensive favorites, and prop bets for y'all to consider, which I'll highlight some great opportunities for you guys. Hopefully you can use these predictions and data to confirm your picks, avoid mistakes, find value bets, or just informative and entertainment purposes to prepare for the lead up to this weekend's event. Please like and subscribe if you find this content interesting, informative, or helpful. It helps keep me motivated to create these videos for you all. I've also added my Patreon information in the description if you'd like to support the channel through that. There's a $10 a month contribution tier and a $20 a month premium tier, which will give you early access to all of the analysis and results for my videos, as well as additional data analysis and stats. So that includes my prediction model results, fighter history, stat overviews, promising underdogs, best inexpensive favorites, prop bets to consider, and a deep dive into each fighter's record history and an analysis through each of their individual historical fights. So you'll get all sorts of stats and data analysis which will help you with your picks and bets. And for $20 a month, which is around $5 per event, you can get all of that information. You can purchase event analysis separately, but the membership is cheaper and easier. Plus, you're directly helping improve and expand the content of this channel. Running this data and analysis, each of the prediction models, the fight simulations, and updating the site takes hours every day and week, so I'd greatly appreciate your support. And thank you all for the recent support that you have shown. It truly means the world to me that we can share our passion for MMA and continue to build this community together. The last thing that I want to mention is that there is a BetUS promotion in the description below. If you use that link, it's an affiliate link, so if you set up your account, you'll get a promotional offer with that. I'm excited to continue working on this analysis and content for you all. Thank you guys again for all of your support. Let's go ahead and dive right into the predictions. UFC 314 is this weekend, and it is an absolute banger of a card. You definitely need to watch this card because it has huge implications. Multiple fights on this card have huge implications for each division. Very fun card. It's a Miami, Florida card, and you know those cards are always super fun. For the main event, we have Alexander Volkanovski. He is fighting Diego Lopes, and they are actually fighting for the vacated UFC Featherweight Championship that Ilia Topuria has now vacated in his move to lightweight and in him seeking that lightweight championship fight against Islam Makhachev eventually. So this is very exciting for the featherweight division because it really leaves things up for grabs. Will we see the former king retake his throne and his crown and become featherweight champion once again? Will all balance be restored, guys? Or is this a brand new era? Is this the start of the Diego Lopes championship era? Very excited to cover each and every single fight on this card. And also for the co-main event, don't forget we have Michael Chandler versus Paddy Pimblett. Very, very exciting fight. I mean, that one's going to be extremely electric. Let's go ahead and dive right in, starting with the first fight, Nora Cornolle versus Hailey Cowan. Now for this fight, I did end up going with Nora Cornolle. I'm giving her a 63.7% probability of victory. I have 7 data science prediction models that I continuously tweak and improve over time. And now those models, when weighed together, they're giving her about a 62% probability of victory. So we're right about in the same range. Now, let me break down in 3 categories why I like Nora Cornolle. Let's first talk about her stat advantages, then we'll talk about her record, and then one of the most important parts, we're going to talk about the non-statistical things that she's bringing to this fight that I really like and that made me pick her. First, let's talk about the stats. So Nora Cornolle, she lands 0.44 more strikes per minute with an 11% higher striking accuracy while absorbing about 1 less strike per minute with a 28% higher striking defense than her opponent. Now her total record, 8 wins and only 2 losses here. Out of those 8 wins, let's break it down real quick. 6 of them were KOs/TKOs, 1 was a submission, and the last one was a decision victory. All in all, she has an 88% finish rate. Very impressive stuff. Now, out of her 2 losses, both of those were decision losses. She does have 4 first-round finishes out of her 8 wins, so about half the time she is able to get it done within that very first round. Now, recently she's been on a tear. She's won 4 of her last 5 fights, but she is coming off of a loss into this particular fight. Let's kind of see the most recent time she won. The most recent time she won was back in April of 2024, and then she ended up losing a little bit later in September of 2024. Let's talk about the non-statistical factors that I like about Nora. The first thing, and this one's probably obvious, I mean, she is a beast of a Muay Thai fighter. She has been a 5-time French national champion and a silver medalist at the 2022 World Games. So she knows her stuff. I mean, she has a great amount of experience in her striking disciplines, and that will give her an edge whenever it comes to the technicalities of striking and fighting and just understanding what's going on during those stand-up exchanges. Also, she is pretty intelligent when it comes to striking and her precision. I mean, we've seen her kind of mix up those striking targets very effectively. She attacks the body, goes for the head, and then the legs, all with a lot of precision. She's calculated. I think she's very dangerous, especially in those kickboxing exchanges. Not to mention, she is pretty tough overall and a resilient fighter. I mean, she's been through a fair share of challenges. Just to kind of touch base lightly on this, she had like this autoimmune disease I saw, but you know, she's fought through that, and she's just overcame that, and I like that kind of resilience in fighters. She does have a finishing ability, like we said, about half the time she is able to get it done within the very first round. But not only that, out of her 8 wins, majority of them, 6 of them, were KO/TKOs. And I like to see that, especially in women's MMA, where we don't see that very, very frequently. Now, she does have good experience, too, against very high-level opponents. I mean, she's faced fighters like Jacqueline Cavalcanti and Jocelyn Edwards in the UFC. And so I think that she's just competing at a higher level than Cowan here. And so all of that, plus her adaptability whenever it comes to pressure, I like what I see out of her. I'm going to give Nora Cornolle the benefit of the doubt here. I don't think she gets the finish, though, guys. Let me be very transparent. I would take her via decision, and that's the bottom line for this fight. For the next fight, we have Tresean Gore versus Marco Tulio. For this fight, I did end up going with Marco here. I'm giving him a 68% probability of victory. Pretty confident in him overall. Now, the prediction models, they kind of agree. They gave him a 63% probability of victory, all things considered. Now, the statistical advantages that Marco has here, he lands 2 more strikes per minute than his opponent. He absorbs 3 less strikes per minute, and he has an 11% higher striking defense. Let's take a look at his record. 13 wins and only 1 single loss. Let's break down those 13 wins real quick. 9 of those 13 wins were KO/TKOs, 1 was a submission, and 3 were decision victories. All in all, Marco has a 77% finish rate, which I really like. Now, out of his 1 loss, that was a KO/TKO finish loss, which was unfortunate. Now, he does have 7 first-round finishes, meaning more times than not, 7 out of 13 times, this guy is getting it done within the very first round. Recently, he's been on a tear, you guys. He's been on a 9-fight win streak. I love to see that kind of momentum coming into a fight. His most recent one was just January, a few months ago, and his most recent loss was back in September of 2018, which really feels like a century ago if you think about it. Let's talk about the stylistic things that Marco's bringing to this fight that I really like to see. The first thing that I would mention is his dynamic striking style. Now, this guy, he's very versatile in his fighting. We've seen him do some spinning back kicks, some side kicks, and he has very powerful leg kicks as well. And I think that his ability to kind of mix up those attacks and also at the same time avoid really telegraphing and letting his opponent know what strike he's about to throw, that just makes him very unpredictable as a fighter. And I think that that goes a long way whenever it comes to the dynamic of a fight, because you can play to your opponent's weaknesses, you can hesitate a lot more, you can feint, a whole bunch of stuff that opens up opportunities. He's also one of those fighters that continues to come forward towards his opponents and just pressures them throughout the fight. And not only that, but his volume, he combines it with a bunch of power. He also has knockout power. So he's a really dangerous fighter, all things considered. He has a ton of momentum also. His defense is also pretty good overall. I mean, at least compared to Gore. I'm not saying universally, but just compared to Gore in this matchup, I have a lot of confidence in Marco. That's why I gave him a pretty high probability overall, all things considered. Honestly, I would not be surprised at all if Marco gets the victory here via KO/TKO. That's what I would lean toward. So I'm going with Marco Tulio via finish, KO/TKO in this fight. I don't think we're going to be disappointed. For the next fight, we have Mudaerji versus Mitch Raposo. For this fight, I am picking Mudaerji. I ended up giving him a 66.6% probability of victory. The prediction models, they were close. They gave him a 65% probability of victory. I had to bump it up a little bit based on what I've seen from the guy. Now, the statistical advantage that he has a height advantage of 3 inches, a reach advantage of about 8 inches, and with that, on average, he lands 2.4 more strikes per minute with a 20% higher striking accuracy, and he also absorbs 0.23 less strikes per minute with a 9% better striking defense and a 16% better takedown defense. Pretty good stats. In fact, the left side of your screen is very green, and so I really like what I see on paper from this guy. Let's talk about his record. 16 wins and 7 losses. Not the best record, but let's talk about it. Out of those 16 wins, 13 of them have been KO/TKOs. 1 was a submission and 2 were decision victories. All in all, the guy has an 88% finish rate. Pretty impressive. Out of his 7 losses, 6 of those were submission losses, which is crazy. And 1 was a decision loss. And so keep that in mind. He does have 11 first-round finishes out of his 16 wins. A lot of the time this guy gets it done within the first round. He's kind of an all or nothing type of fighter, right? Recently, he's done okay. He's won only 2 of his last 5 fights, but very recently, if you zoom in a little bit, he has not been doing too hot. He's lost 3 fights in a row, but I think he's going to snap that streak this weekend. His most recent win, it was in January of 2021, and his most recent loss was in October of 2024. I think he's going to be able to beat Mitch, and let me tell you why. So the first thing I would say, and it's pretty obvious, it's his physical advantage. That height and reach advantage, it's pretty significant overall, at least too much to ignore. And then when you take a look at the statistical averages and just how this guy fights, his style in general when he fights, he uses it to his advantage pretty well. Not only that, but when you take a look at his striking, he is pretty creative. I mean, he's kind of flashy, he has some dynamic striking. He has that reputation for that highlight reel style knockout. You know, he does a bunch of knockouts. Clearly, as we saw, he has a bunch of first round knockouts. He has those spinning kicks, very fast punches, blah, blah, blah. He's able to land very unpredictable strikes. And I think what that's going to do for poor Mitch, it's going to overwhelm the guy. Mitch is kind of a fundamental guy, you know, he sticks to the basics, which is not bad, don't get me wrong, but I think Mudaerji's fighting style is a little bit overwhelming for a guy like that. On top of all the other disadvantages that Mitch already has, at least on paper. Now, Mudaerji, another thing about him, and I'm probably butchering his name, but y'all bear with me, he does have good experience against higher level opponents here. I mean, he has plenty of more experience in general in professional fighting. The guy has had 16 wins and 7 losses versus Mitch, only 9 wins and 2 losses. So he has more experience than Mitch in general. And also, Mitch hasn't really fought much in the UFC. He had that fight with Andre Lima back in 2024, which he ended up losing via split decision. That was on the Makhachev versus Poirier card. That was a crazy card, but my point is, he doesn't have a lot of UFC level experience. And then you take a look at a guy like Mudaerji. He's been fighting in the UFC since 2018. And I mean, he's fought guys like Charles Johnson, Tim Elliott, Matt Schnell. To be fair, he's lost to all those guys, but still good experience all in all. He had that win against Malcolm Gordon. It is what it is, guys. I mean, I think he's going to be a little bit desperate to snap that 3-fight losing streak that he has. And we know that he does have some good finishing ability. Obviously, this guy has a ton of first-round finishes. And not only that, but out of his 60 wins, like I said, 13 were KO/TKO finished victories. So we know that he does have a good finishing ability. And he is a southpaw fighter. Keep that in mind. I think he's gonna give Mitch quite a few challenges in his dynamic. Because when you deal with a southpaw fighter and those left-handed guys, what you're doing and what you're having to deal with is all those weird, awkward angles and striking patterns. You got to figure out the guy very quickly. I see Mitch struggling with that. I'm not going to say Mitch is not going to be able to face him, but I think he's going to struggle with him a little bit. I also don't think that Mudaerji, I don't think he's going to come out very reckless. I think he's going to be a little bit calculated but aggressive at the same time because he has to get rid of that 3-fight lose streak. Otherwise, I mean, it's pretty much bye-bye, right? That's how it looks. All in all, just to kind of put a bow on this, I'm going to take Mudaerji via decision. I don't think he's going to get the finish just because he's going to be a little bit more calculated. And keep in mind, I said it before, but Mitch is more of a fundamental style fighter, so he's going to be a little bit cautious himself. We'll see how the dynamic of this goes, but I think it's going to go via decision, and it's going to go towards Mudaerji. For the next fight, we have Sedriques Dumas versus Michal Oleksiejczuk. Great fighters here. So for this fight, I am picking Michal Oleksiejczuk here. I'm giving him a 66% probability victory. Prediction models gave him a 63% probability victory. I bumped it up a bit because I like what I see out of Michal. Let's talk about the statistical reasons why first. So this guy lands 2.9 more strikes per minute than his opponent. He has a 2% higher striking accuracy, an 8% better takedown accuracy, and a 8% higher takedown defense. Now, his total record, 19 wins, 9 losses. Let's break that down real quick. Out of those 19 wins, 14 of them were KO/TKOs, 1 was a submission victory, and 4 were decision victories. All in all, it gives him about an 80% finish rate. I like all the finishers we have on this card. Now let's break down his losses. 9 losses. 1 of them was a KO/TKO finish. 6 of those were submission losses, which is pretty important to keep in mind, and 2 were decision losses. Now, Michal does have 11 first-round finishes out of his 19 wins. More times than not, he's getting it done within the very first round. But full disclosure, guys, recently this guy has not been doing well. He's only won 1 of his last 5 fights. In fact, he's been on 3 back-to-back losses, so that's not good from a momentum standpoint. His most recent win was actually back in August of 2023. Most recent loss was back in August of 2024. But I still think that he wins this fight against Sedriques, and I'll tell you guys why. Let's talk about the non-statistical things to keep in mind for this fight. Now, the first thing I want to mention is his experience. Keep in mind, this guy has fought guys that were light heavyweights, and he's fought in the middleweight division as well, and that's good experience just in general. But specifically, this guy's fought guys like Sharon Magomedov, Kevin Holland, Michael Pereira. To be fair, all 3 of those were losses, but still, you know, good experience all in all, even though 2 of them were in the first round, but still. Good competition overall, good opportunity to learn from your mistakes. He's also fought against guys like Chidi Chokwani, who he actually knocked out, and then you have Caio Borralho, that was a loss via submission, but he's also fought Cody Brundage, Sam Alvey, etc., etc. The list goes on. So I like his experience. I also like the fact that he is a pretty aggressive fighter overall. He pushes forward, he pushes the pace, kind of forces his opponents into some awkward and uncomfortable exchanges, which he takes a pretty good advantage of. At least he did up until his most recent fights, but still, he has the ability to do that in his back pocket. I think he's going to be able to snap his streak. He's also a durable fighter all in all, and recently one of the things that really tipped the scale for me for this guy is that recently, in preparation for this fight, this guy has teamed up with the Fighting Nerds. And if you don't know who that is, that's a group of fighters that consists of Caio Borralho, Carlos Prates, Gene Silva, Mauricio Ruffi, and Bruno Brazil. And if you don't know, or if you didn't pick it up by now, those guys are so far undefeated in their records, and they're those guys that wear those glasses at the end of their fights, if you've seen that. That's not just a gimmick, that's a group of people. And so they're undefeated. They are very talented, and the reason they call them Fighting Nerds as well, because instead of posing as like these tough guys and all that, I mean, they actually come from a pretty educated background. You have Borralho, who used to be a chemistry teacher, and they come from this era of fighters that's kind of new. They're taking a very analytical approach to fighting, and it's paying off. You know, it's paying off to pay attention to technique and perfecting your craft and being analytical instead of a raging bull. And don't get me wrong, I love all sorts of fighters and all sorts of styles. I like watching a raging bull go off, and I also like watching someone meticulously pick apart their opponent. I think that's the beauty of MMA. They know their stuff, right? So that's a high caliber team. That's probably going to do him good, especially when he learns from his losses. When you start pairing everything together, you can make a decent case as to why Michal should win this fight. He has good knockout power. I mean, I like the way he closes his distance as well. All in all, I actually think Oleksiejczuk is going to get a KO/TKO. It would not shock me if Michal puts this away. And that's what I'm fully expecting for this fight. That's the bottom line. For the next fight, we have Darren Elkins versus Julian Erosa. For this fight, I'm giving Julian a 71% probability victory. Very confident. Now, the prediction models, they gave him a 66% probability victory, but I bumped it up. I like what I see out of Julian, and I'm pretty confident in him overall. Now, let's talk about the statistical advantages that Julian brings to the table. He has a height advantage of 3 inches. He's 5 years younger. He has a reach advantage of 3 inches. He has a 2.8 higher strikes per minute rate with a 10% better striking accuracy, and along with that, a 14% higher takedown accuracy. And then in terms of defense, he has a 2% better takedown defense. Now, taking a look at Julian's total record, 30 wins, 12 losses. Out of those 30 wins, 11 of those were KO/TKOs, 14 of those were submissions, which is insane, and 5 of those were decision victories. All in all, giving him a versatile 83% finish rate. Very important to keep that in mind. Out of his 12 losses, 8 of those were KO/TKOs, so that is a little bit concerning. Before those were decision losses. All in all, he has 9 first-round finishes out of his 30 wins. He's not very much a first-round finisher, but he is a finisher, and keep that in mind. Now, recently, he's done decent. He's won 3 of his last 5 fights, and he's coming off of 2 back-to-back wins into this fight. His most recent win was back in July of 2024, and his most recent loss was back in April of 2023. Let's talk about what Julian does good and why I think he's going to defeat Darren Elkins with a decent amount of confidence. I like his variety as a striker, and I like his creativity as well. He has those flying knees, he has those front kicks, and he has those very effective leg kicks. He doesn't have those sloppy leg kicks that don't make a difference. He has effective leg kicks, and that's very important because what it does is it disrupts fighters' rhythms. Like Elkins, he's going to be struggling a little bit. He's going to hesitate in those exchanges because of those leg kicks. I'm telling you. Also, Julian's really good at range control. I mean, he manages the distance well. He uses that reach very effectively. That he has an advantage in this fight. He uses it very well. He's rangy with his strikes and his footwork, and that keeps your opponent a little bit far away, and that neutralizes guys like Elkins when it comes to their pressure-heavy approach. Keep that in mind. Now, this guy, obviously, like we talked about, he has a finishing ability, not just in the first round, which is about a third of his wins, right? I think it was 9 out of 30. He has finishing ability throughout the fight, and not only is it from knockouts, but it's in submissions. This is exactly what I like to see in guys that I like to be confident in. He's an adaptable fighter as well. I mean, he's really good in those chaotic situations with a lot of pressure. He kind of creates chaos himself, and he does it very well. And that kind of unpredictability it's going to help him out a lot. He's 35 years old, and so I know that seems a little bit old for professional fighting, right? But his opponent here is 40 years old. Elkins, 40 years old. Keep that in mind. So he does have a little bit more of a youthful advantage. I'm not saying the guy's super young, but you get what I'm saying. He's a resilient guy overall. All in all, just to wrap this one up, I'm taking Julian via decision. I don't think he gets the finish, although it wouldn't kind of shock me if he does. But I think it's still going to be a decision victory, especially against his opponent here like Darren. But that's my bottom line for this fight. That's my prediction. For the next fight, we have a very interesting fight against Jim Miller, the veteran. He's been in UFC 100, he's been in UFC 200, even 300, and you best believe he'll be in 400, 500, and 600. I'm just joking, but this guy has been around for a while, and he really has been in each of those, UFC 100, 200, 300. Very crazy stuff. And so he is fighting this young, up-and-coming Chase Hooper, which we've actually seen a lot of, and I'm actually excited for this fight, guys. I am picking Chase Hooper. I'm giving him a confident 73% probability victory. Hopefully he doesn't let me down. Prediction models, they ended up giving him about a 66% probability victory. So they did like some of the stats on Jim Miller. But honestly, I would keep time in mind. A lot of Jim Miller's stats do come from very old fights as well. And so you gotta this is where human input is extremely important when it comes to statistical models and stuff. But anyways, let's talk about the statistical advantages that have me very confident in Chase Hooper in this fight. So first of all, the guy has a height advantage of 5 inches right off the bat. If you've seen Jim Miller, I mean, he's a pretty short and stout kind of guy. Then you have Chase Hooper, who's very long and skinny and lanky, right? And so not only that, but look at the age difference. 41 years old versus 25. That's kind of a dangerous territory to be in terms of that variance, right? He also has a reach advantage of 3 inches. He lands 2 more strikes per minute. He has a 10% better striking accuracy. He absorbs 0.25 less strikes per minute while also landing 0.31 more takedowns on average with an 8% higher takedown defense, 0.7 more submissions on average. I might as well have told you the advantages that Jim Miller has because there's not a lot, respectfully. A lot of green on the right side of your screen right now in favor of Chase Hooper. Let's talk about the kid's record. 15 wins and only 3 losses. Let's break that down. 15 wins, 4 of those were KO/TKOs. 8 of them have been submissions. That's definitely a strength in this guy's game. And then 3 decision victories. All in all, 80% finish rate. Very versatile overall. Out of his 3 losses, 1 was a KO/TKO, and the remaining 2 were decision losses. Now, he does have 7 first-round finishes out of his 15 wins, so about half the time, he can kind of get it done within the first round. But even then, he's still a 80% finisher, so that's good. Throughout the fight, we can still expect a finish. Recently, he's done good. He's won 4 of his last 5 fights. In fact, he's been on a 4-fight win streak, so he's won 4 in a row coming into this fight. I love to see that. Most recent fight was back in December of 2024, and his most recent loss was back in October of 2022. Now again, let's talk about the stylistic things that are going in Chase Hooper's advantage here. He's young. He's obviously developing as a fighter. He's even developing physically. I mean, he continues to settle into his physique and continue growing in strength, in experience, all in all. He also has a crazy amount of momentum and confidence coming into this fight. I mean, being so young but already having accomplished as much as he has, that's very important. I mean, this guy, he's still like 8 to 10 years before kind of reaching his peak and a little bit after his peak, right? He has a lot of time on his hands, and that's good, especially for where he's at right now. Now, he's an adaptable fighter overall. He's kind of like a sponge, in my opinion. He continues to get experience. He continues to absorb more information about fighting and learning as a fighter. Also, just in general, if you take a look at this style matchup, you have Hooper, like I said, who's kind of a rangy guy. he's going to be able to dictate engagements and really pick Jim Miller apart from a distance, control those exchanges on the feet and even on the ground if it gets there. And I think that that's just going to neutralize any kind of grappling approach that Miller may have. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me at all if this fight ends up going to the ground and Chase Hooper ends up winning via submission. In fact, that's what I'm going to go with. Chase Hooper via submission is the move. That's what I'm going with. And that is the prediction for this fight with a lot of confidence. At least in Hooper winning. Maybe not him getting a submission. It might go to decision, but I do feel pretty confident that Hooper will be able to get it done. For the next fight, we have a pretty underrated fight in my personal opinion because both of these girls are very talented. We have Xiaonan versus Virna Jandiroba. Now for this fight, I ended up picking Virna and I ended up giving her a 59% probability of victory. Prediction models gave her a 57%. I bumped it up a bit. Let's talk about the statistical advantages here. Virna has a reach advantage of an inch. She absorbs 0.71 less strikes per minute, lands 1.4 more takedowns on average, and has a 10% better takedown defense. Her total record, 21 wins and only 3 losses. Out of those 21 wins, 1 was a KO/TKO, 14 have been submissions, and 6 were decision victories, which still gives her a 72% finish rate just because of all of those submissions. Out of her 3 losses, all 3 of those were decision losses. Now she does have 8 first-round finishes, which means just about a third of the time she is able to get that submission within that very first round. But even if she can't, she can find that submission later on in the fight, and that is important. Recently, she's won 4 of her last 5 fights. In fact, she's on a 4-fight win streak coming into this fight. A lot of confidence and a lot of skill and improvements overall. Her most recent win was back in July of last year, and her most recent loss was all the way back in October of 2021. Let's talk about what she brings to the table in terms of her stylistic advantages. First thing I would say, keep in mind, she's a BJJ black belt with those 14 submission wins. She's one of the most dangerous grapplers in the female strawweight division, and her ability to dominate on the ground and secure those key submissions, I think that that's a huge advantage against a fighter like Jan, who really, she only has 1 submission win. She relies a lot more on striking, and she's a good striker. I like watching her fight. But Virna is just extremely talented when it comes to those submissions and even those grappling transitions. I mean, she finds a way to bring the fight to the mat. She does her clinch work really, really well. She does those trips, and she's just very persistent as a fighter. I respect that a lot. She creates a lot of those high pressure situations for her opponents. And, you know, a lot of the times you're just trying to count down to see when Virna's going to be able to secure that submission victory. She's very, very experienced in those high level grappling scenarios. She's methodical as a fighter. She's strategic. She's also mentally tough overall. She has a ton of momentum, like I said. She's adaptable as a fighter. Everything I pretty much want to see in a fighter that I'm picking with confidence, I like to see in Virna. So I do expect her to get the victory here. We have a classic striker versus grappler, and I think the grappler is going to get this one, guys. I'm going Virna Jandiroba. I'm taking her via decision. I don't think she gets the submission, but it would not completely shock me, if I'm being honest, if she does end up nailing one of those submissions. Nonetheless, I do feel confident in Virna Jandiroba winning this fight. For the next fight, we have a very interesting fight here. We have Dan Ige versus Sean Woodson. Dan 50K Ige, man. I love watching this guy fight. He steps up to the plate when he needs to, and he's a heavy hitter. But now, unfortunately, I did end up going with Sean Woodson. Let me be real with you guys, but not with a lot of confidence. I ended up giving him a 59% probability of victory. And so prediction models, they give him about 56. So I bumped it up just a little bit because I like what I see out of Sean Woodson. And obviously you could check your screen real quick. On paper, this guy has a lot of advantages when it comes to statistics, but I also believe he does have some key stylistic advantages as well. I'm going to cover it all. First, let's talk about the stat advantages here that Sean Woodson has. First of all, he has a height advantage of 7 inches over Dan. He's also a year younger than the guy. He also has a 7-inch reach advantage, and this guy's build is very weird. If you've seen Sean Woodson fight, or if you haven't, go look him up, go watch him fight. He has a very interesting build. He has like a short torso, long legs, long arms. Very, very interesting to go up against a guy that's built like that, but he uses it to his advantage, and that's very important to keep in mind. I know I shouldn't be talking about the stylistic stuff right now. Let's focus on the stats, but you guys get what I'm saying. So in terms of the stats, he lands 2 more strikes per minute. He has a 1% better striking accuracy, a 2% better striking defense, a 36% better takedown accuracy, and a 27% better takedown defense. And lastly, he also lands 0.2 more submissions on average. Now, his total record, 13 wins, only 1 single loss. And then you got someone like Dan Ige, 18 wins, 9 losses. Let's break down Sean Woodson's record a little bit to get a better understanding. He's had 4 knockouts, 1 submission, and 8 decision victories. All in all, he has a 39% finish rate. That's pretty low, but what that kind of translates to when you talk about a guy like Sean Woodson is that he's able to control fights pretty well overall, and he gets that decision victory more times than not. Now, his one single loss was a submission loss. I wouldn't really pay too much mind to that. He does have 4 first-round finishes out of his 13 wins, so he's not very much a high finisher and, overly aggressive fighter. He is more tactical. Recently, he's won 4 of his last 5 fights. Amazing momentum coming into this fight. 4-fight win streak. Most recent one was back in December of last year. Most recent loss back in June of 2020. So it's been a long time since he's lost. Let's talk about the stylistic advantages. Like I said, first thing that comes to mind is his frame, his height and reach advantage, and how he uses it in his fights. He maintains the distance really well. He controls the range really well. And then he lands those strikes without really exposing himself too much when it comes to counter shots. And so kind of branching off of that a little bit, I like his striking style overall. I mean, keep in mind, his background, a lot of people don't know this, he's an amateur boxer. In fact, his record was 46 wins and 3 losses. He used to be Golden Gloves champion as well, and so he is an elite striker whenever it comes to MMA. He's carried that over, and he does really, really well with his boxing experience. He has a great sharp jab, he switches stances very nicely, and he just uses his long limbs very well. Like I said, the way the guy's built, as soon as he was born, I'm sure people were like, this guy got to go into boxing or something, because just the way this guy looks is insane. Now, not only that, but one improvement that I've seen in Sean Woodson's game that I really, really had to point out is his defensive improvements. He's shown an improvement not only in terms of striking defense, but in takedown defense as well, and just overall defensive skills. I mean, that frame, it definitely contributes to that, but it just makes it very hard for shorter opponents, especially guys like Ige, to really successfully execute those takedowns or just control them on the ground. I mean, when I tell you guys that it's a very awkward frame, I mean it. Like that, and it translates into his wins, I promise you. Just watch some of his previous fights. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So this guy, he has the momentum. He has the confidence. He's an adaptable fighter overall. He's fought guys like, Charles Jourdain, who is more grappling heavy, right? And he's been adaptable in those kind of fights. He's shown improvements in those areas, even offensive grappling. I mean, he really surprises not only his opponents, but even fans that watch him fight. He's just one of those guys that is pretty impressive overall and versatile. So I like his training. I like who he is as a fighter. I think he's skilled, and I think he gets it done respectfully. I have a lot of respect for Dan Ige, don't get me wrong. In fact, it wouldn't shock me if Dan Ige just walks out of there and just heavy haymaker drops Sean Woodson. Crazy stuff, right? It's MMA at the end of the day, and they don't call Dan 50K Ige 50K for no reason. It's because he earns that 50K. But logically speaking, which you guys know I like to stick to logic, I give you guys the logical breakdown of fights, the logical analysis. Sean Woodson should win this fight, and I think that he's going to win via decision. I don't think he gets the finish, let me be real. I just think that Sean Woodson gets it done via decision. And that fight was our feature prelim of the night. Now we're going into pay-per-view zone. Let's talk about the first fight of our 5-fight pay-per-view card. We have Nikita Krylov versus Dominic Reyes. For this fight, I'm actually going for the underdog here. I'm picking Dominic Reyes. I'm giving him, to be fair, a 53% conservative probability of victory. Prediction models are also giving him a 53% probability of victory. I like what I see out of him, especially stylistically, and I'll explain why. When you take a look at the stats, a lot of the advantages I know are over on Nikita's side. But let me make a case for Dominic here. First, let's talk about his statistical advantages. He has a height advantage of an inch. He lands 1.3 more strikes per minute. He has a 5% higher striking defense and a 30% better takedown defense. Let's take a look at the guy's total record. 14 wins, 4 losses. A lot of those losses coming recently. Let's break down his wins first. Out of those 14 wins, 9 of them were KO/TKOs. The guy is a hard hitter. 2 of those were submission victories and 3 were decision victories. All in all, a 79% finish rate. Pretty impressive stuff. Out of his 4 losses, 3 of those losses were KO/TKOs, and again, a lot of them recently, and 1 was a decision loss. He does have 10 first-round finishes out of his 14 wins, so when he does win, there's a great chance that he gets it done within that very first round. He does that well. Now, recently, all in all, not the best momentum, right? He's only won 2 of his last 5 fights, but zoom in just a little bit. He has a current streak of 2 wins stepping into this fight. So let's not remember Dominic Reyes as the guy who lost 3 in a row or something like that. Dominic Reyes coming off of 2 fights. Important to keep that in mind before we jump into his stylistic advantages. Most recent win was actually back in December. He does stay active. Most recent loss was back in November of 2022. Now, I want to bring your attention to the recent guys that both of these guys have fought. First, let's start with Nikita Krylov. So this guy, he fought Ryan Spann back in 2023. He fought Volkan Ozdemir back in 2022 and Alexander Gustafsson back in 2022. Paul Craig, who he lost via submission. Magomed Ankalaev, who he lost via decision. And then Johnny Walker. Now we're talking 2020 and before that. Before that was 2019 Glover Teixeira, who he lost via split decision. 2019 Ovince St. Preux. So important to keep in mind who these guys have fought, how frequently they fought, and how recently they fought. Let's switch over to Dominic Reyes, and I want you guys to pay very close attention. December 2024, fought Anthony Smith, beat him via KO/TKO. Okay, although that's Anthony Smith, and we know that he's at the later stage of his professional fighting career. Let's take a look at other wins. We have Dustin Jacoby, 2024, another KO/TKO first round victory. We have 2022, Ryan Spann. He lost within the first round, KO/TKO. We have 2021, peak Yuri Prohaska. He lost to Yuri. Second round KO/TKO. In 2020, I mean, Dominic had one hell of a year. He lost to Jan Blachowicz via KO/TKO within the second round. That was a championship level fight. He also lost to John Jones in February of 2020, and that was via unanimous decision. Now, before then, right before those series of losses, he fought Chris Weidman and beat him. He fought Volkan Ozdemir, beat him in 2019. Ovince St. Preux in 2018. So here's the thing. A lot of the losses that Dominic Reyes went through honestly can be attributed to a very high level of talent. He gave John Jones a run for his money, and whether you're one of those guys that think that Dominic Reyes defeated John Jones or you think that John Jones defeated him, regardless, that was a great performance from Dominic Reyes, and I know that he's not that same exact fighter, at least from what we've seen in the few fights after that, but it's important to keep in mind, he has fought higher level opponents than Nikita has coming into this fight, and so that experience is pretty important. Don't get me wrong, I mean, Nikita is 33, he's had plenty of fights, 39 overall, he has a lot of experience, but Dominic has fought some of those top UFC guys, and that does make a difference. So don't just knock Dominic Reyes out for losing a few fights in a row. You know, I think that bubble has been popped, and he's kind of back in that win column. So I need that view of him to get shaken off from your guys' head. Now, let's talk about the other stylistic things. Now that we've really thoroughly looked at their records, let's talk about the stylistic advantages. So Reyes, he's known for his knockout power. Like we said, he has that in his back pocket. He has not lost that. He has a good amount of competition with previous very high-level fighters. He has an athletic background. I need you guys to know that Reyes has a collegiate level athlete background. That does contribute and transfer over to the amount of explosiveness, the agility we see in him, and just the overall athleticism we see in him as a fighter. And I think that he's more dynamic than a lot of guys are. And then you got guys like Nikita, who's more of a grappling heavy type of guy, right? So Dominic Reyes, I like the momentum he's carrying. He's more active recently. He's had a couple fights in 2024. He's won. And then you have Nikita, who hasn't fought since March of 2023. That's another thing that I really wanted you guys to pick up on when I broke down the records and their years. Now, I like Dominic Reyes' takedown defense as well. I think that plays to his strengths. He is also a southpaw fighter. And like I said earlier, when you have those southpaw guys, you have guys that create some very unique angles and create a lot of challenges for orthodox style fighters like Krylov here. I mean, he has that left hand and a lot of power in that left hand. And that will give him some ability to control the distance, and it's going to be a huge advantage in this particular matchup. He's also, like I said, been more active. So all of those things combined, I think I'm making a decent case as to why I'm giving Dominic Reyes the benefit of the doubt here, ever so slightly. Again, 53% towards Dominic Reyes means 47% towards Nikita here. So it's not like I'm saying Dominic Reyes is going to hit a home run against this guy. Let's just be honest. I do think that Dominic Reyes is going to get a win here, and it's going to surprise a lot of people. I don't think Vegas is truly understanding the dynamic of this fight the way that I do or that some of you guys do that agree with me. And if you don't, that's fine. I mean, we could agree to disagree. Bottom line, for this fight, my prediction is Dominic Reyes via KO/TKO. I think he drops Nikita, if I'm being honest. I like the fact that he's a southpaw. I like the power he brings. I like his first round finishing history. That's really good. And I just don't think Nikita's been as active as he should be stepping into such a big fight against someone like Dominic Reyes, who has been active recently, has been on a tear, has fought some good level opponents with good skill, and has learned from his losses as well, does have an athletic background. those are all things that I really, really like in a fighter like Dominic Reyes. For the next fight, we have Yair Rodriguez versus Patricio Freire, aka Patricio Pitbull, aka Patricio, Mr. Bellator Mega Champ himself. This is going to be a great fight, guys. I'm very excited for it. Now, unfortunately, I could not run these guys through the prediction models, but I am going to end up giving Yair Rodriguez about a 65% probability of victory. Let's talk about statistical advantages. Yair has a lot of them. Let's talk about it. So Yair Rodriguez, he does have a 6-inch height advantage. He's 5 years younger than Patricio here, and he does have a reach advantage of 6 inches as well. He lands 1.8 more strikes per minute with a 5% higher striking accuracy. He absorbs 0.4 less strikes per minute, and he lands 0.09 more takedowns on average with a 9% better takedown accuracy. And he also lands 0.1 more submissions on average. I would take the stats with a little bit of a grain of salt personally. Let's talk about records though. Yair's total record, 20 wins, 5 losses. Out of his 20 wins, 9 of them, almost half, were KO/TKOs, 5 were submissions, and 6 were decision victories. This guy is very well-rounded across the board, very skilled and talented, very versatile, and that does give him a 70% finish rate. Out of his 5 losses, 3 of those were KO/TKO losses, 1 was a submission loss, and the last one was a decision loss. He does have 8 first-round finishes. Keep that in mind. Out of his 20 wins, almost half the time he can get a first-round finish, whether it's a KO/TKO or sometimes a submission. Now, recently, Yair hasn't done too well, but I personally attribute it to the high level of opponents he's faced. He's only won 2 of his last 5 fights. In fact, recently he's been in a little bit of a slump. He's lost back-to-back fights, so he's had a 2-fight losing streak coming into this fight. His most recent win, it's been a while, guys, February 2023, and his most recent loss was February of 2024. I think he's going to snap his losing streak here. There's a lot that I like about Yair Rodriguez. Let's talk about his stylistic advantages. First thing I would say is his dynamic and very unpredictable striking style. There's no better example of this. If you have not seen Yair Rodriguez's fight with the Korean Zombie, I highly recommend you watch it. Don't skip through it. Don't fast forward to the end. None of that. Just watch the entire fight and let me know what you think about it once you're done watching it. It is extremely unpredictable, Yair Rodriguez's style, and even at the very end of fights, he can still manage to finish you. It's absolutely insane. I mean, this guy he's not only a versatile striker, he's a creative striker. His strikes are strikes that you don't normally expect. He has a Taekwondo background, and that really helps him just throw a very diverse array of kicks, right? From very weird angles as well. Things that you can't really train and predict your eye to recognize when you're fighting a guy. And so that kind of stuff, it makes you harder to predict, even harder to defend against. And not only that, but when you see his style, what Yair Rodriguez does very well is he seamlessly chains his kicks together and with punches, and he just creates this beautiful, fluid, and dangerous offense. It's really poetry in motion. I love watching Yair Rodriguez fight, man. Not only that, but let's kind of zoom out. The guy has a physical advantage here as well. He has a height and reach advantage, a frame advantage. He's 5'11", he has a reach of 71 inches like I said. Then you have his opponent, Patricio Pitbull, who's 5'5", with a 65-inch reach, and that pairs really well with his stylistic advantages in terms of striking. Not only that, but Yair has amazing cardio and endurance. I mean, he's known as one of those guys with really, really good cardio, and that just helps him maintain his very high pace throughout 5 rounds, not just 3, but 5 rounds, and that kind of advantage is going to be very critical against a guy like Pitbull, especially given Pitbull's age, right? And it's just accumulated wear and tear. Pitbull has been in a ton of Bellator championship level fights, and I know UFC has very high level competition, but I would say Bellator does as well, and being in all of those championship level fights, there is wear and tear on Pitbull that is not there on Yair. He's more youthful. He has a physical freshness. He's only 32. He's 5 years younger. And those are 5 very key years compared to Pitbull. I mean, you're taking a look at a 32-year-old versus Ferrer, who is 37, right? And then not only that, but Yair has a lot less fights, and usually you'd make the argument that, well, that means that Pitbull is way more experienced, right? I would agree with you, but when you're taking a look at the number of fights, I think Yair has about 26, I think Pitbull has about 43. That is a lot of physical damage over time, and it's really mileage, right? Think about it as mileage on a car. And so when you kind of have that newer car, it just runs a tad bit better. You know what I'm saying? I hope you guys get what I'm saying. He has good experience overall. He has UFC level experience, which is a plus. I'm not saying it's the deciding factor, but you guys get what I'm saying. And he also he has this improv fighting style, man. I mean, he can really improvise during fights. He's very unpredictable, fun to watch, spectacular finishes. Even that last second knockout, you guys know what I'm talking about. Very, very fun fighter. All in all, just to kind of wrap this one up, I am taking Yair Rodriguez. I'm taking him via decision, although that finish threat is always going to loom with a guy like him. But I am going to take Yair Rodriguez via decision. I think that's the logical take here for this matchup. For the next fight, we have a heated fight against Bryce Mitchell and Gene Silva. These guys do not like each other. They have some bad blood history whenever it came to a press conference. You guys can look that up, but a lot of bad blood between these guys, and I like to see them settle it. I love heated fights. I love these rivalries and stuff. And so we have Bryce Mitchell, Gene Silva. I ended up giving Gene Silva a 69% probability victory. Keep in mind, this guy is part of that fighting nerds group that I told you about earlier. This guy is analytical. He's doing very, very well, and he's on a tear, if I'm being quite honest. And Bryce Mitchell, on the other hand, we've seen him struggle for, a few fights recently. All in all, I gave Gene about a 69% probability victory. Prediction models gave him a 65% probability victory. I bumped it up based on what I've seen. So first, let's talk stat advantages. Gene Silva is 2 years younger than Bryce, but both guys are pretty young overall, especially in their age range. Now, Gene does land about 3 more strikes per minute with a 7% higher takedown accuracy and a 47% higher takedown defense. The advantages here are a bit scattered between both guys, so we need to dive a little bit deeper. Let's take a look at Gene Silva's total record. 15 wins, 2 losses. Let's break that down. Out of Gene's 15 wins, man, 12 of those were KO/TKOs. This guy is a finisher. And then 2 of them were submissions on top of that. And then 1 fight only has gone to the judges for a decision. All in all, that gives him a 93.4% finish rate. Insane. Out of his 2 losses, both of those were decision losses. He does have 10 first-round finishes out of his 15 wins. So most of the time, he gets it done within the very first round. Recently, the guy's been on a tear. Not only has he won the most recent 5 fights he's had, let's zoom out. He's actually been on a 12-fight win streak. These fighting nerds do not play. Let me be very honest with you guys. If you hear fighting nerds, right now, no one, like I said, has popped that bubble. I mean, you have the Dagestanis who are really good at wrestling and all that. Then you have these fighting nerds who are also killing it on an analytical, consistent level. So this guy is part of that, and that's very important to keep in mind. Then you have someone like Bryce Mitchell who tends to struggle. We'll talk about the stylistic stuff in a second. Now, Silva's most recent win, that was back in February of this year. He's very, very active. His most recent loss was all the way back in April of 2018. Again, that kind of stuff feels like a century ago. Let's talk about Silva's stylistic advantages here. Silva is known as a very dangerous and very, very skilled striker all in all. This guy has a history of knockouts in his career, and they're fun to watch. He lands these powerful and very precise strikes, and that gives him an edge, in my respectful opinion, whenever it comes to the stand-up exchanges, especially against a guy like Mitchell. And Mitchell striking, it's kind of not his strongest point, right? I'm not trying to hate on Mitchell. I think that, he's a good fighter all in all, but I think that Silva just has that crazy power and precision that's needed in this game. He also has a psychological edge, man. I mean, this guy really got under Mitchell's skin. I highly recommend you guys watch that press conference. But just to kind of give you an idea of what happened, Bryce Mitchell has said some very concerning stuff about a particular group of people. Like I said, I recommend you guys go look it up yourselves, but that's the best way I could put it, at least in terms of YouTube. But Silva, during the press conference, what he did was he kind of called him out for it. He made fun of him. He poked at him. He did some verbal jabs, and that did get under the skin of Mitchell. You could see Mitchell be a little bit unsettled. I'm not going to pay too much attention to the psychological warfare kind of stuff. I do think it gives a little bit, depending on who we're talking about, sometimes it does get under guys' skin, and it does affect their performance. But I don't want to focus too heavily on that because it kind of takes away from these guys' preparation and their training, which is the bigger part of coming into a fight. That's the bigger part of an analysis. You could talk about this psychological stuff all day, but what you really want to focus on are the logical factors, the stylistic advantages, the statistical advantages, the preparation, all of that kind of stuff, right? So let's just move on. When it comes to momentum and confidence, Silva, I think he takes the cake, man. His team, his preparation, those fighting nerds, again, those guys make very good game plans that are specifically tailored to opponents, and that's kind of scary. The way that these guys are analytical, the way that they pick their opponents apart in terms of preparation, that kind of stuff is very admirable, especially for me as an analyst and someone who loves breaking down fights and just studying these guys and where they went wrong, what they did right. I love this kind of stuff, and it seems like it's paying off for that group of fighters, those fighting nerds. They're doing very, very well so far. And so not only that, the guy is adaptable as a striker. He has some very interesting spinning techniques, good elbows, good counters. He's versatile. He's great on the feet. In that kind of arsenal, he's just more dynamic of a striker compared to Michal, who's very straightforward as a striker. And so a lot of people are going for Silva here. I'm not an emotional picker. I like to pick based on logic. I don't care what has happened with these guys and stuff like that. I'm going to go with whatever is logical because that is what a true analyst does. But in this case, I think Silva will defeat Michal. No bias or none of that, just logic. I think he's actually going to get the KO/TKO. I've seen some weakness in Michal's game and his chin, and that is concerning stuff. And when you have a fighter like Gene Silva, that is going to be a looming threat constantly in this fight. So, final verdict, Silva via KO/TKO. For the next fight, we have our co-main event of the evening. Our co-main event of a banger pay-per-view card. We have an electric fight with Paddy the Baddy Pimblett versus Michael Chandler. Iron Mike. Let's talk about it. So, when it comes to this fight, I did end up going with Paddy Pimblett, and that might be shocking for a lot of people. I did think about this one long and hard, but I ended up going with Paddy, and I gave him a 64% probability of victory. Prediction models, they gave him a 63% probability of victory. I mean, it's pretty much the same ballpark, right? But first, let's talk about the statistical advantages that Paddy has. He has a lot of them. You could see a lot of green on the right side of your screen here. He has a height advantage of 2 inches. He's 8 years younger than Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler is 38 years old. Paddy is only 30 years old. Keep that in mind. Now, Paddy also has a reach advantage of 2 inches. He lands 0.5 more strikes per minute. He has a 3% higher striking accuracy. He absorbs 0.55 less strikes per minute, which is also important. And he lands 1.5 more submissions on average. Now, let's take a look at their records, right? Paddy, he has a total record of 22 wins and only 3 losses. Out of his 22 wins, 6 of them have been KO/TKOs, 10 of them were submissions, and 6 were decision victories. Now, that does give him a 73% finish rate, which is worth noting. Out of his 3 losses, 1 was a submission loss, and 2 were decision losses. He does have 12 first-round finishes out of his 22 wins, so, you know, about half the time, or a little more than half the time, he can get it done within that first round, just depending on who he's fighting. Recently, he's been on a tear. This guy's won 8 fights in a row. I'm not saying every single fight was extreme dominance and he's been, you know, there's no holes in his game. No, guys, don't get me wrong. But he did get the victory in his previous 8 fights. That is true. His most recent one was back in July of last year. His most recent loss was September of 2018. Again, all the way back in 2018. Let's go ahead and talk about the stylistic reasons why I did not pick Iron Mike. As much as that killed me to not pick Iron, I just couldn't pick Michael Chandler, and I'll tell you exactly why. The first thing that I want to discuss with you guys is strategy when it comes to these guys. When you take a look at Michael Chandler's game plan and his strategy when it comes to fights, he's a brawler. He has a tendency to brawl. And when you take a look at Paddy, he's noted that Chandler, he kind of abandons his strategy whenever it comes to striking and hitting. He really opts for those wild exchanges instead of executing a game plan properly. You see this in multiple fights, especially, you know, recently whenever we saw Chandler come into the UFC. You did see a lot of chaotic exchanges where there should have been more strategy and more striking technique and stuff like that. This guy's a swinger. He's a brawler. You know, he hits hard, and I got to give it to Chandler. I mean, he is a hard hitter, and it does work for him a lot of times. But Paddy's aware of that. So he's already coming in with the mindset of understanding his opponent's tendency. And I'm not saying that Michael Chandler can't, you know, get ahead of that and prepare to be a little more technical and cautious, but a tendency is a tendency for a reason. If that's your nature as a fighter, that means that you really rely on that, and you've relied on that to get to where you're at. Paddy knows this. He knows that Chandler, he has that very predictable overhand strike and that aggressive style. And in general, when you talk about fight IQ and discipline in general, Chandler, he's gotten his fair share of criticism for not really listening to his corner or prioritizing. The guy is an entertainer, right? Michael Chandler, he goes out there, he throws some wild shots, he makes you scream and shout and love a fight. But what he doesn't really do well, that I haven't seen him do or execute, is strategy. fight IQ, discipline, stuff like that. And then you have Paddy, who tries to be a little he tries to be a little bit more systematic when it comes to his approach in fighting. And I think that that's going to give you an edge whenever you're fighting a guy like Michael Chandler. I'm not saying Paddy is able to execute perfectly when it comes to strategy or just being patient and systematic. We've seen some sloppy moments in Paddy's fights as well. But just keep in mind what both of these guys are bringing to the table. I really wanted to emphasize on strategy for a while to make you guys understand that. And so Paddy's coming in with a bit of confidence. He's coming in with a proper mindset to take down a guy like Chandler and defeat him and just stay composed under any kind of pressure or chaos that Chandler might cause. And now let's talk about some of those physical and technical advantages between both these guys. You have a reach advantage. You have Paddy with about a 1.5 reach advantage overall. He's going to be able to maintain distance and land some clean strikes while avoiding some of Chandler's power punches. One thing about Chandler's fight game that's kind of weak, he finds he has to get deep inside the pocket to land on his opponents because he's a short and stout kind of guy, right? He has that Chad Mendes build. He just has that Uriah Faber type of build. You know what I'm talking about, guys. If you've seen UFC for a while, he's short and he's stout and he's muscular. But then you got Paddy Pimblett, tall, leaner, blah, blah, blah. And so that's key. Keep that in mind. Paddy's going to have an easier time striking against a guy like Chandler compared to Chandler landing on Paddy. And when you pair that with some of the factors like Paddy absorbs less strikes per minute on average than Chandler does, that's not good for someone like Chandler. Chandler's taking more shots. Paddy's not taking as many shots, and it's going to be hard for Chandler to hit him. So keep that in mind. And then also just grappling skills. Now, Chandler, he is a very strong wrestler, but he doesn't really have those submission threats or even like a back-taking ability, right? And then you have Paddy Pimblett, who is, he is equipped with some BJJ skills, and they're a little bit more dynamic. And we see that with his submission rate, right? He's done a lot of submissions. I think it's like 10 submissions in his record. And so he does have that in his back pocket. He's a little bit sloppy sometimes. Don't get me wrong. I'm not part of the hype train, when it comes to fighters. I like to just analyze and keep things logical. Now, I think it's as simple as this, guys. Former lightweight champion Charles Oliveira, he said this, he pointed this out. He said, if this fight extends into the later rounds, Paddy Pimblett's youth, his mobility, and his endurance, it's going to overwhelm Chandler, who kind of fades whenever it comes to longer fights. We've seen this in Chandler's fights. And so Chandler, he leaves these openings due to his aggressive style. Like I said, he's a bit aggressive. Pimblett, he's opportunistic, especially when it comes to his grappling and striking. I think he's going to capitalize on these key pivotal moments in this very, very fun fight. We've seen that in previous fights as well. He secures submissions very, very quickly, and we all of a sudden see him get the win. He does well. And I am kind of worried for Chandler because this is a very high-pressure fight. I mean, you're fighting a guy who's lower ranked, like Paddy Pimblett, and a loss to him is not only going to propel Pimblett, but it's going to really hurt Chandler's reputation, especially when it comes to, that elite stage that he's at. So, and he's 38 years old. It's going to have a huge negative impact on his career. He has a lot of pressure on him. That's all I'm trying to say, guys. All things considered, I'm thinking Paddy Pimblett gets it done, and I actually think he gets it done via submission. Now, again, I'm only giving Paddy a 64% probability of victory. That still gives Michael enough of a margin to get victories, like if in terms of probability, Michael still has a decent chance of pulling off an upset here. And to be fair, I don't think Paddy has faced someone as skilled or as aggressive, I should say, as someone like Michael Chandler. So this is going to be a test for both of these guys. A lot of pressure for both of them. I do think Paddy still comes out on top, and I think he gets it done via submission. This one I'm extremely excited for. For the next fight, we have our main event for UFC 314. A very, very good fight here, guys. Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. For this fight, I ended up going with Alexander Volkanovski. I gave him a 58% probability of victory. That's not extremely high, but it's enough to where I think Alexander's going to get the job done, at least logically. Prediction models gave him a 56% probability of victory. I bumped it up. I mean, I like what I see out of Alexander Volkanovski. He's proven himself time and time again. First, let's talk about stats before I dive into all of that.
Statistical advantages for Alexander Volkanovski. He lands 2 more strikes per minute than Diego. He has a 3% better striking accuracy. He absorbs 0.67 less strikes per minute. He has an 8% better striking defense. He lands 1.28 more takedowns on average, and he has an 18% higher takedown defense. A lot of advantages leaning to the left of your screen here towards Alexander Volkanovski. Let's take a look at the guy's total record here. 26 wins and only 4 losses. Out of those 26 wins, 13 of them, half of them, were KO/TKOs. 3 of them were submissions, and 10 were decision victories. This guy can control fights, and he can finish fights. He has a 62% finish rate, all things considered. Out of his 4 losses, 3 of them have been KO/TKOs, a lot of them recently, and 1 was a decision loss. He does have 7 first-round finishes out of his 26 wins. Obviously not a huge part of his game, but there are times, at least 25%-ish of the times, he can get it done within that first round. Recently, he's not been doing too well, but that's because of the elite level of competition the guy has been facing, guys. He's only won 2 of his last 5 fights, but he's fought a bunch of crazy dudes. We'll talk about it. He is coming off of 2 back-to-back losses coming into this fight, although context is very important to understand what happened, right? Now, most recently, his win was back in July of 2023, and he's kind of been struggling since. But again, context matters. His most recent loss was in February of 2024. Let's talk about his record real quick before talking about stylistic advantages. I'm going to take you guys back to some peak fights when it comes to Volkanovski. Let's go back to 2019. This guy fights Max Holloway, and he beats him for the championship, 2019. And then July, he has a rematch with Max Holloway. This is 2020. He beats Max Holloway again. He goes on to fight Brian Ortega September of the next year, 2021, and he beats Brian Ortega and retains his championship belt. He then fights Chan Sung Jung, and he beats him KO/TKO in the 4th round in 2022. He then goes on again to have a trilogy fight with Max Holloway and beats him once again, unanimous decision in 2022. Here's where things get a little bit weird. He decides to fight Islam Makhachev. He moves up, right? He tries to fight Islam and he ends up losing. That's because Islam is a beast. He's very much used to that weight. In fact, he weighs more. He cuts his weight. And then by the time he fights, I mean, this guy, he's much bigger and stronger than a lot of guys. These Dagestani fighters, they really just focus on their weight cutting, and then they have that strength advantage in general. And so they take it to the extremes, but that's just part of their game plan. Now, Volk, he did end up losing that fight. And he goes on to fight Yair Rodriguez. He wins that fight, which is pretty important to keep in mind because Yair, he was doing good. This was 2023. He wins and beats Yair Rodriguez and continues his reign as champion. Now, here's the thing. He goes to fight Islam Makhachev. He steps in short notice to replace Charles Oliveira. And he steps in, he fights Islam Makhachev. He's not very ready. If you look at his physical condition, he's not as ripped. He looks a little bit pudgy, right? Better than a lot of us, but still, the guy's not very much prepared. He ends up losing to Islam Makhachev, and he suffers a KO/TKO, which is his first KO/TKO loss since 2013, which, I mean, you could probably not even count that. So he gets kicked on the head by Islam, ends up losing his championship, and it's pretty tragic. And that's where the meme comes in. If you've seen the meme ever on Twitter and all this other stuff where they're talking about Alexander Volkanovski stepping in on short notice for some of the craziest fights and stuff, it comes from this fight. And, I respect Alexander Volkanovski. He put it all on the line here, and he did end up getting that loss. It is what it is. So then, this is 2023. Let's fast forward. Now we're talking February of 2024, pretty much last year. He fights Ilia Topuria and suffers a genuine loss, a KO/TKO in the 2nd round to Ilia Topuria. Now, to be fair, he did lose to Islam Makhachev twice. I'm not trying to take that away, but context is really important. He stepped in on short notice, and in the fight before, he moved up in weight to try to fight Islam Makhachev. So, and again, these are huge names. Ilia Topuria, Islam Makhachev, Yair Rodriguez, Max Holloway, Brian Ortega. These are massive names. Guys with a ton of skill that Alexander Volkanovski was going up against and beating more times than not. Now let's flip over to Diego Lopes and see who he's defeated recently and kind of compare the level of experience and technical knowledge that both these guys have. So when it comes to Diego Lopes, his most impressive stretch started back in 2023. He defeated Gavin Tucker via submission. That was in the very first round. Then he goes on in 2023 later to fight Pat Sabatini, knocks him out in the very first round. Then 2024, April, he defeats Sadiq Youssef. He knocks him out in the very first round, and this is where people start really paying attention to Diego Lopes and he starts exploding. I've been watching him for a while, but this is where he really catches attention. He has a major fight with Dan Ige in June of 2024. This is UFC 303 Pereira versus Prohaska during their rematch, right? And so he defeats Dan Ige with a unanimous decision victory. Impressive stuff all in all. And then he fights Brian Ortega, which is an interesting fight, and he beats Brian Ortega via unanimous decision. So he has some good names, but not the same level of experience that Alexander Volkanovski has. And so that's the thing. When it comes to experience in very high stakes fights, Volkanovski has competed in 10 consecutive title fights, guys. This guy knows how to handle pressure when it comes to championship fights. And then when you take a look at Diego Lopes, it is his first title fight, and he's very confident as a fighter. He's up and coming, he has a lot of momentum, but Volkanovski just has that wealth of experience that I'm really invested in, and I think he's going to be able to navigate some of those mental and physical demands of such a huge, massive implication of a fight for this vacated featherweight championship. Now let's talk about fight IQ. I mean, both guys have a very good fight IQ in general. Both guys are adaptable. But Volkanovski, he's just a little bit better at tailoring his game plan to exploit some of his opponent's weaknesses. And he's used to fighting some of these longer, taller guys like Diego Lopes. I mean, think about it. Alexander Volkanovski has fought and defeated Max Holloway 3 times. He defeated Yair Rodriguez, Brian Ortega. He adapts mid-fights, and he really controls the tempo of these fights. He has great cardio and endurance, especially when he's prepared for fights. And he's had a proven record against some taller opponents with the same build. All of those kind of guys have the same build here. Volkanovski thrives with that. He has these long arms. Don't forget that. Volkanovski does have a pretty good reach for his height, and I think that helps him. He stays short, so he's very hard to hit, but then he lands a lot of shots. He also has really good wrestling and takedown defense under his, in his back pocket. He has the championship level pedigree like we talked about. And so all things considered, I'm really leaning towards Alexander Volkanovski to win. I don't think he gets the finish. I think Diego Lopes is highly skilled. We're going to see a lot of this kid. It would be interesting to see him win. It would be a brand new era, but I think Alexander Volkanovski should get the job done, step back in as champion. He has a lot of experience, and even recently, I know things have been shaky with him, but you guys have to understand that context as to why that's happening. Now, a lot of people might disagree, or some people might disagree, and they think Diego Lopes, it's his time to shine. It is what it is. I understand where you're coming from. I don't think Alexander Volkanovski is completely done. He is stepping into some dangerous territory. He's 36, but I still think he has a lot of skill in him. And if you give him that chance to prepare for fights, he does have very key, crucial experience. And Diego Lopes, I mean, there's not a lot of holes in Diego Lopes' game. But one thing I will say is that he's finished a lot of his recent fights very, very quickly within that first round. So sometimes you don't get the opportunity to get exploited, if you know what I'm trying to say. Alexander Volkanovski, he stuck it through multiple 5-round style fights. He's finished it sometimes. He's gotten to the judges and gotten a unanimous decision victory. I think he has what it takes. I'm going to take Alexander Volkanovski via decision, and that's the bottom line. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video and listening to the end. If you have made it to the end here, I really appreciate each of you guys. I'm going to try to be more consistent here and put out content for you guys. I want to work on some additional content, maybe breaking down specific fights, where fighters went right or wrong, what they could have done, what fighters do well, and stuff like that. So I want to put out more content. You guys let me know what you would like to see or what would be helpful whenever it comes to preparing for fights. But again, thank you guys so much for watching and listening. I can't wait for this weekend. I hope you all have an amazing event, an amazing weekend and week leading up to UFC 314. Thanks once again, and let's cue the conclusion.
And with that, those are all of the fights for this weekend's event. I hope you all enjoyed the analysis and that your bets hit. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe, as it'll help keep me motivated in creating these videos. Running this data, analysis, prediction models, and creating charts and graphs takes hours every day and week, so your support is always appreciated. Please also check out my Patreon if you'd like to support me through there. There's a $10 a month contribution option and a premium $20 a month option, which comes with early access to all of the analysis from this video, as well as promising underdogs, favorites, prop bets, and all of the extra data analysis and stats as well. This analysis, information, and these stats will help you with your bets, and it'll help support my efforts to continue providing and expanding content for you all. So please check out that Patreon if you want to show me some love and help me out there. Thank you all once again for watching, and as always, see you guys in the next one.